Hello everyone and welcome to part 3 of my tower defense series, and this actually concludes the tutorial. And as you might have guessed, we're going to be looking at how to make the towers. Now, recall last time that we made these creeps that could spawn and move through a set of waypoints. So all we actually needed now was towers. Now, these red dots here, they are the creeps, and we already have them working and moving from one waypoint to another. So what we're going to look at is this fella here, the tower. Now, what is the tower defense actually all about? I mean, what mechanics are actually behind a tower shooting at a creep? Well, in this case, we are going to have a range of our tower, which is the green box here, and every time we move our creep, we want to test to see if that creep is now within the range of our tower. And if it is, we want our tower to start shooting at it. And with that basics, that core concept design in mind, we're going to be looking at the code. And I've actually taken a different approach this time. I've actually already made the program and written every single line of code that needs to be written. So what I want to do is slowly walk through each set of changes I've made. Now, first of all, this should hopefully speed up the videos a little bit, because at this point I'm assuming you already know a few things. So I won't waste your time by typing in code. But it's a test, so please let me know if you prefer the old way of making my videos, because then I will remake this video to have the same style as the old one, where I'll type in code. But let's just dive right into it and see how it turns out. So first of all, I opened up the project and I went into the main storyboard file. And we only had these two view controllers, and this was just a button to get us into our playing area. Now, what we want to do is drag in a button. I'm going to call it T1, or build tower 1. But what this button is going to do is that it's going to select the type of button, or sorry, the type of tower we want to build. So we needed to call an action, and I've already have the action method created, and I call it select tower. So we're going to go ahead and hook that up. Now, what you need to find now is something called a long press gesture recognizer, and add it to the view here. And don't just drag it in, because then you'll add it to the image view. You need to add it to the view itself. And when you've done that, you control drag down here, and then you select spawn tower to hook it up to that action method. And that's actually all we have to do in the storyboard file to get this up and running. So after we've done this, before we examine the methods we just created here, let's look at a new class called the tower class. Now, I'm going to be using this commercial banner here to slowly walk through the lines of code and take it one line at a time. Whoops. Alright, just for the sake of completeness, this site is where my programming forum is located, if you don't know it already. And it's also there that you can check out my new project that I'm working on. But if you go into that site and then you press the programming part, then you'll have access to the forum, and we can discuss everything you want to discuss, and if you have questions and so forth. Righto. Add interface, tower, NSObject. So this is just a basic class, a subclass from the NSObject. It has a float that we call fire speed. It has an integer called damage, and then this timer called fire timer, and a UI image view called the projectile. Now, these 4 instance variables we have here, they are actually what defines our tower. The fire speed is how fast our tower will shoot. The damage is the amount of damage our tower will deal per shot. The fire timer is an NS timer, and we want to use that timer to call our fire method at the fire speed interval. So these two are actually a bit linked. And the UI image view projectile is just an image view that contains the projectile for this tower. Then we have another property here, non-atomic strong creep target creep, and you see we imported the creep file here. The target creep is the creep this tower is shooting at, so it needs to have a reference to that creep. The UI image view tower image, and that's basically just a visual representation of our tower so that we can add it to the screen. The UI image view range view, that's the green box that we drew up on the sketch. This is the range view, and that's the view we're gonna actually be using to test to see if creeps are in range. And here we just have a basic initializer. It initializes with a certain damage of our tower and a speed and an image. And you can see this is an image that we're gonna be adding to the tower image. We have a method called void start firing. Then we have another method called fire, one called stop firing, and one called damage creep. The start firing method is being called from the game view controller, as you'll see in a bit. The fire method is what sets up our NS timer here to start firing. Oh no, sorry, that's the start firing. The start firing method is going to set up the fire timer, and the fire timer will then call the fire method, and the fire method will then damage the creep if necessary, or stop firing if the creep went out of range or died. So that's how our tower class is looking like. You can also pause the screen and write it down. That's why I thought this approach might be a bit better, but we'll see what you guys think. Now if we go into the .m file of our tower class, we have the basic initializer here. Well, there's not much to talk about here, it's just a basic initializer that sets the damage, the fire speed to the speed, and it makes the tower image a UI image view with a frame, and we just set the frame to 0, 0 and the width and height that we want the tower to be. And then we add the image we passed in here to this tower image. The projectile is a UI image view as well, so we just made it a 0, 0. The coordinates doesn't matter, so don't worry about these yet, we're going to set them later. And we made it 30 width and 30 height. We manually set the image of this projectile to an image called projectile.png, but obviously you can mess around with this only once. The range view was also a UI image view, and we initialized it with a frame of, again, coordinates doesn't matter, and 100 times 100. Now, the bigger you make these values here, the width and the height of the range view, the higher the range your tower will have. We set the background color of our range view to green, and we set its alpha to half, so that is a transparent range view. And that's actually the initializer. Then we start firing. Now, that's a small method because all that really does is to make the fire timer and its timer schedule time with time interval. The fire speed is the time interval. The target is the tower itself. It will call the method fire, and it will repeatedly call this method. So this is the fire method. Now it sets the center of our projectile to match the tower image view .center, and that's why we didn't have to set the projectile coordinates up here, because we're going to do it down here every single time we're firing. And then we set its alpha to 1, you'll see why in a bit. We set the tower image view .superview, so we get the super view of our tower image, and we add another subview to that super view, which is the projectile. And the super view here is going to be this view here. So we're going to add the projectile to the view where our tower is on, and it's going to be on this view. And that's what we want, because we want to see our projectile move on the screen. Right? And then we make an animation. and I've set it with a duration of half a second. And what it does is that it takes a projectile and it sets the center to the target creep .creep_imageview.center. So if we go back to the sketch, we have a tower here. It fires a projectile, and we set the projectile center to the tower image view center. So it's going to start here, and then down here we set its center to the target creep center, and the target creep center is this one. And we made this animation half a second, so it'll take this half a second to reach the creep. And when it's done, when it reached the creep, then the completion block here, we want to call the method DamageCreep, and we also want to hide the projectile. If we look at the method DamageCreep, which we call when our projectile hits the creep, we subtract the health from the creep. That's, well, pretty much self-explanatory. We damage the creep. And what we do here is actually creating a label that displays how much damage we did to the creep. And, well, I've made it a pretty big label. It doesn't need to be this big. I've set the text to be minus the damage it dealt. Set the text color to be black and the background color to be a clear color. Then I I set the center of this label to the target creep's center, so it'll display the damage on top of the creep that was damaged. The target creep, I used that target creep to get the super view, and then I add a subview, damage label, and again the same approach I did up here. I grab the view and then I add a new view to it, and this time it's the damage label. Then we have another animation here. It takes 1 second, and what it does is that it sets the alpha of the damage label to 0, so it hides the damage label in a fading motion, and when it's done hiding it, it will remove the label from the super view. Now what we do here is that we test to see if our creep died, and if it did, we need to remove it. So if the target creep.health is less than or equal to 0, first we need to remove it from the store. Remember, we had the creep store class that had an array with a pointer to all creeps active on the screen. So we first of all remove the visual representation of our creep from the view by calling the remove from super view. And after that, we simply access the store, the creep store, active creeps, remove object, target creep. And also, we don't want it to keep firing at a dead creep, so we call the method stop firing. Now, we also need to test to see if the creep is no longer in range, because if it isn't in range, we don't want to fire at it. So, if cgrect intersects rect, this method returns a Boolean value indicating whether two rectangles intersect. So the two rectangles we're going to see if are intersecting is the target creep, the creep image view dot frame, and the other rectangle is the tower image dot frame. Now, what does this mean? Well, if we look at the sketch again here, the first we pass in is the creep image view dot frame. Well, this is the red creep here. That's its that's the creep image view, but also the frame. That's the rectangle that this creep image view is inside. If that rectangle intersects with the tower image dot frame, that's actually a mistake. It needs to be the range view dot frame. And if it doesn't intersect with the range view, if that's equal no, that means that it's outside of this green box. Then we want to stop firing as well. So, and that's actually the damage creep method. And now we move on to the stop firing method. It also returns nothing. And all it does is to invalidate the timer, set it to nil, and set the target creep to nil. And that's actually the tower class. So let me know if you want me to upload these files somewhere, post it on my forum, and we can work it out from there. But now that we have a tower class, and the tower class is responsible for firing at a certain target creep, but we still need to build the tower and to set its target creep. And we're going to do that in the game view controller here. And we've added these two new instance variables, and I've imported the tower class as well. The tower to build is the tower objects that we want to currently build. And we've also added an mutable array called all towers. And every time we build a tower, we want to add this tower to this array. And you'll see why in just a bit. And this we used in the previous tutorials. And the only new methods here are the spawn tower, UI long press gesture recognizer, sender, and the IP action select tower. The spawn tower here, remember that was the method being called by our long press gesture, and this one here is the UI button that was supposed to represent the type of tower we want to build. So, well, the first thing we do is that in the view.load method, down here, let me just increase the text size. I'm not quite sure you can see it all right. Set to a 22, that should be sufficient. There we go, hope it's better. And since we made a new array, in the view.appear, we just say all towers equals a new mutable array. And the other method we had was the select tower method. This method here. Whoops, don't want breakpoint. Now, this method, let's just do this. The select tower method, it tests to see if the sender.tag is equal to 0. This test is not needed here, but you will need it if you expand this to have several towers. So you test each button to see which type of tower you need to build. And I see that if this UI button, it has a tag of 0, well, then I want to build this type of tower with 10 damage and 1.2 fire speed and with this image. And that's actually just how you keep on making new towers. Then you just fill new towers into the select tower method. And if we go up here to the spawn tower method, there. Oh, that's actually a good way of doing it. The spawn tower method, you see it takes in a UI long press gesture recognizer, and we're going to need that. But first we test to see if the tower to build is not equals nil. And the reason behind this is that by using long press gesture recognizers, every time that you hold your finger on the screen, you will call this method. And we only want to build a tower if someone pressed the select tower method first, so we actually have a certain tower to build. So if it's not equal to nil, that means we have a tower to build. So the tower to build .tower image view, we set the center of that to be the sender, and that's the UI long press gesture, to location in view self.view. And this method here returns the coordinates that this long press gesture was invoked on. So this actually enables us to place our tower at the exact position that the user wanted to build the tower on. And then we add the tower as a subview to our view, or well, we add the visual representation of our tower. The tower to build range in view that was the green box, we set that center to match the tower's visual representation, so it will be on top of each other like it was in our sketch here. Then we also add another subview, and that is our range view. Then we add this tower to all towers, and we set the tower to build to nil, so you can't continuously keep building the same tower, then you need to select it again. And that's basically the spawn tower method. And now we're actually almost at the end. We just need to see that for every time we move the creep, we need to see if it now intersects. And the move method is a great method for this purpose. So first we check if there's any creep in range. And if you recall from the previous series, this method, it enumerates through all the creep objects in our creep store, so all the active creeps. It causes them to move, and then we enumerate through all towers active on the screen. We use this method again to see if they intersect, if our creep image view, our creep visual representations frame is intersecting with the tower image, and that's a mistake again, it's the range view dot frame. And if there was an intersection found, we want to set the target creep to nil. We want to set, we test to see if the target creep is nil right here. And if the target creep is nil, that means this tower has no targets, so it's okay to add this creep to a target. We add this creep as a target creep, and we tell the tower to start firing. That's it. This is a little clumsy, so let's just walk through it one quick time. We go through all creeps, tell them to move. Then we go through all towers for each creep, so we take creep A, we go through all towers with creep A, and if we find a tower that can shoot at this creep, then we test to see if this tower already has a target, and if it hasn't, we need to start shooting at it. Then we get creep B, go through all towers, and do the same thing over and over again. And that's basically all we need. So let's just take this for a spin and see how this pans out here. Play. See our creeps spawning, so we press build tower, and then I hold the button down. I build a tower, and you can see that I'm throwing axes, I'm damaging the creeps, and when the creeps move too far off the range, he can't shoot at them anymore. So we need another tower, we can build it down here. We'll start shooting at him here. Build another tower here. And so you can see this works. Obviously, there's a few mistakes. Well, first of all, it might look like it's actually shooting out of range, whereas it's not. That has something to do with the sizes of our creep image. But it's actually a functioning tower defense game now, or at least the very basics of one. You would need to build upon this to achieve what you want, but this should actually be a decent starting point. And obviously you can make a lot of changes. For instance, you might not want this range view to be displayed, and that's actually an easy thing to hide. We just go ahead and do that real quick. And if we go into the Initializer method here, we just set the range view's alpha to 0. Let's take this for a spin. I'm just gonna make bigger iPhones so you actually have a chance of seeing. Let's play here, and you can see now we just spawn the tower. We can't see the range, but it looks a lot nicer. It actually feels a lot like a tower defense game, and it can actually be quite funny if you just build upon this and you can do a lot of things. You can see it's easy to add towers, and it's easy to add more creeps. So well, I guess that concludes this tutorial. So please guys, let me know on my website here, and then go into the forum part in the top banner. Go in there and let me know what you think, or well, you could post a comment, but I prefer to gather all posts regarding my videos on my forum here, so it's easy for people to read everything regarding every single video I've made. So please let me know what you think about this type of going through the code that I've already written, so I'm not writing while talking. So just let me know how you thought it felt compared to the other videos, and I hope you could use this, and I hope these 3 videos have given you a good foundation of how you can make tower defense games without using any of those predefined engines if you want to build it from the ground up. I think it really gives a good understanding of the language if you do it this way, or just try it out for a bit. And let me know if you want me to expand on this video. If you want me to make a video where I make some more towers and some more creeps, I could do that. But I suggest you try and go and do it on your own. And if you need the source files here, let me know. Then I can throw them up on my forum, and you can download them there if you need to. So thanks a lot for watching, guys, and please subscribe if you liked the video, and let me know if you liked the video. I'm always interested in feedback, and thanks a lot for watching, and hopefully I'll see you another time. Hey?